I was born in the Netherlands. I lived in Holland for 11 years and moved to New York City. Learned English, went to Our Lady of Sorrows, graduated #1 in my school, and ended up going to the best math and science high school in New York called Stuyvesant High School. That's where I got to touch computers for the first time. These were the days of punch cards, and I would put in my punch card program today, and I would get the result, which is the printout, 2 days later. That was the turnaround time. That wasn't good enough for me, so I cheated, and I made 6 copies of my program and put one in each drawer of each class. So I had a turnaround time of 4 hours, and my teacher couldn't understand how I was so fast. End of high school, I'm 18. I moved to Hawaii. Boy, I spent a year surfing and diving. You know, if there were waves, I'd be surfing. If there was no waves, I'd be diving. I was in the water every day. I was a fish. And one day I read in the newspapers, oh my goodness, I can go to night school and have access to computers. My dream. I loved computers. You know, I could ICS 301, you know, learn how to program in BASIC. So I said, Dad, I have access. And about a week into it, my teacher called me in and said, Mr. Rogers, what are you doing? I said, what do you mean, what are you doing? I says, well, you've already used as much computer time as an average student uses in a semester. And I showed him the programs I was working on, and he says, okay, carry on. You know, every assignment that we got, I went extra credit. I was so good that he hired me as a TA, and I graded all the papers for the next ICS 301 class. So I actually got a job, which was very useful. People ask me, what did you study? You know, what was your major? And I always say, I majored in computer science and I minored in Dungeons and Dragons. We had a organization at Campus Center called ARG, the Alternative Recreational Realities Group of Hawaii. You know, the first D&D books, they were like little tiny books, and they didn't really have enough information to actually play the game. You had to make up stuff. So we had all these additional rules, and we called them ARG rules. And so that fleshed out for the dungeon masters and for the players how to play D&D. After, I don't know, I guess it was half a year, I ran out of computer classes that I could take in night school. And my teacher said, well, you know, if you want more computer time, you're going to have to go to day school. And so I said to my teacher, well, I'm not going to take any of my core requirements. And he says, I'm not saying that you have to take your core requirements. All I'm saying is that if you want more computer time, you're going to have to go to day school. I said, okay, I'll go. So I went to day school. I took all the computer classes I could take, and I took only the classes that I was interested in, which is pretty much all the science classes. I even took religion and the meaning of existence, you know, some history, stuff that I was interested in. At the end of 3 years, they called me in and they said, another Mr. Rogers story. Mr. Rogers, what are you doing? And I said, what do you mean? I said, well, you haven't taken any of your core requirements. And I said, well, I've already been to high school. And then they said, well, if you're not going to take your core requirements, you're not going to graduate. I said, there must be some mistake. I'm not here to graduate. I'm here to get an education. And I've already got my education. Thank you very much. And I chased the girl to Japan, and that was it. I went to Japan, and there was no way for me to access computers. And so I ended up working for my father in the gemstone business for 6 years. And then personal computers came out, and I go, oh my gosh, this is my chance. Got my whole hands on a computer. I went to Akihabara, which is the electronics center in Tokyo. What are people buying? You know, they have to do with computer, because I was ready to do an accounting software, for Christ's sakes. And I found out, wow, people are buying games. Games? And they were mostly like little tiny shooting games and jumping platform games. There were some simulation war games. a little bit more complicated. But there were no role-playing games. And I thought, oh, yeah, I can do this. And, at that time in the US, we already had Ultima and Wizardry. What I didn't know was that in Japan, there was no Dungeons and Dragons. Oh my gosh, okay, I have to teach people how to, play this game. I decided I was going to make a game. I was going to have warriors and clerics and magic users, and I was going to have all these different character classes. And my imagination, this game was going to be this big. What did I know about what a computer can do? I didn't, and I didn't know how to read, speak, or write Japanese. My wife could read, but she didn't understand anything about what was written in the manual, so that was kind of useless. And all the manuals were in Japanese, so I had to hack the computer the whole time. I had 64K, so I made a role-playing game within 64K, all graphics, no text, or a little bit of text. I started writing it all in BASIC, and then the 3D part, when I wrote the 3D in BASIC, it was like the walls were like, that's speed, and then you would take a step, bunk, and then it would like, I said, no, there's no way this game can take that long. And so I decided to take that part of the game and write it in assembler. When I was done with that, you push the button, it happened immediately. There was no, you couldn't tell that it was drawing anything. And I was like, that was the first time I really understood how fast assembler was, or conversely, how slow BASIC was. There's a sample monster here. This is the demon. 10K for all monster graphics, and 10K for all people graphics. I think they were about equal in weight. I based the graphics on, on miniatures. Because when we played Dungeons and Dragons, we played them with miniatures. And so you had little people, and every time you went and you bought a new piece of armor, you would see it. And so you graphically could see your group up to 5 warriors getting better and better and better. And I made a dot matrix graphic editor so that I could draw each monster dot by dot. He's already bought armor, he's already bought a shield, he's already bought a sword. I mean, he's already an advanced level character. The only thing that wasn't graphic was potions. Potion, you could see whether you had a little bottle as a potion, but you couldn't tell how many potions you had in your bottle. It's up to 5 potions. I wanted a package that was a little bit more expensive than the other packages. All the other packages were paper. Part of the reason is my game was 7,800 yen when all the other games were 6,800 yen. And the reason for that is because I believed that my game had longer gameplay.
The painting in my office was painted by Roger Dean, known for doing things like the Yes Band logo. And this painting that's hanging in my office was the cover of an RPG game that Henk created called the Black Onyx. And this was the Famicom version of the game. The painting is called Freya's Castle. And Freya actually is Roger's daughter.
That game, it took me 9 months to build. And I would say that's my lifetime greatest achievement. I mean, when you think about it, like today, if somebody gave you 64K and say make a role-playing game, that would be tough. Now, I used to be in the gem business, so I knew all about how to. I told my dad I need 1,000 black onyx. The first 100 people that found the onyx and send me the secret password, which was Yggdrasil, which is the tree of life, I would send them a real black onyx. Black Onyx turned out to be the #1 game in Japan in 1984. I published it myself. My company was Bulletproof Software. And I was all of a sudden a folk hero in the computer game world in Japan. I wrote the first 2 games for the company, or for my company. Came to the conclusion that I couldn't do this for the rest of my life. Basically, writing a computer game is a full-time job. In fact, it's more than a full-time job. I was running the company and I was making computer games. And you can't do both. I had to choose. And so I started traveling around the world, looking for games to bring to Japan. Here we are at Earl's Court. This is the 1988 Personal Computer Show.
Hank, is that so far?
This is the Shanghai on the Sega machine. It's pretty good.
Thank you. Yes, here we have Henk Rogers from BPS. Yes, he's over here breaking in and expanding the UK software market. He's expanding in many different ways, taking over the world.
I hired programmers to actually take those games and move them to the Japanese computers. I'd published 2 of the first 4 Electronic Arts games, Archon and Mule. They were amazing games, by the way. I published the Star Wars games. I made LucasArts. I made deals with companies all over the world. I was more nimble than the Japanese companies because generally the way it works in Japan is somebody sees the game, they bring it to Japan, and then they have all the buchos, all of the managers have to all agree, yes, this is a good game. And that takes too long. I'm the president of the company. I could make the decision. I spoke English. I had that advantage and I used it. I licensed a bunch of games. And one of the games that I licensed in that way was a little game called Tetris. Not only was my game the #1 selling game in Japan in 1984, but it was the #1 game in software rental. You could rent my game for 1 day, use your copy software, make a copy, bring it back, and then the next day somebody else could rent it. You can imagine how many people actually got to play my game. Way more than I sold. And so that was really going to kill our industry. And the magazines were advertising copy tools. Can you imagine? The answer to that, to copy, is Nintendo, because Nintendo was making cartridges. My wife actually read in a magazine that Mr. Yamauchi, the president of Nintendo, plays Go. Wow. And I'd had a submission from a Commodore 64 from England, 9x9 Go. Go is 19x19, but 9x9 Go. And this 9x9 Go was on the Commodore 64, which is a 6502. Nintendo is a 6502. So I knew that the algorithm was going to work. We didn't have to do anything to it. There's no danger of that. All we had to do was change the graphics and the sound and all of that, rebuild that from scratch. No problem. I wrote Mr. Yamauchi a fax. It's Tuesday. Mr. Yamauchi, my name is Henk Rogers. I can make a Go game for your Nintendo machine. I'm leaving for the States on Saturday. I would like to meet you before I leave. Wednesday, I get a fax back. Mr. Yamauchi will meet you tomorrow. I said, wow, that is some fast action there. Okay, so now it's Thursday. Yamauchi says, I can't give you any programmers. And I said, I don't need any programmers. I have programmers. I just need money. And he goes, how much money? And I'm, wow, that's fast. And so I thought of the biggest number I could think of, 30 million yen. And he goes, deal. It's like, whoa, that was fast. That was fast. And that was it. That was pretty much the meeting. I mean, it was over in no more than maybe between 5 and 10 minutes. We had made a deal for $300,000. That's like the biggest number that I've even ever heard of. Okay, fine. So I'm cloud nine. I said, okay, I got to contact the guy from England and say, and make a deal with him, because I actually didn't have a Go game. So I contacted Alan Scarf in England, who had made the game. I said, dude, I'll pay you this much. You got to come to Japan and help me move this game to the Nintendo machine. And Alan Scarf lived in my house for 9 months while we moved the game. Now, to get a computer to play Go is incredible, you know? And now we're talking about a 64K, 8-bit computer playing Go. Are you serious? I mean, The fact that it can play Go at all is incredible. I have little ninjas jumping around collecting the stones. Instead of having a cursor, the stone floated above the board with a shadow, and if you said play there, then it would land on its shadow. It was graphically amazing, and it actually played pretty decently. It's 9 months later, and I'm back in a room with Mr. Yamauchi, and Mr. Yamauchi is fumbling with the controller. I swear he'd never touched the controller before. I was like, are you serious? This is a Nintendo machine. You've never actually, I didn't say this, I'm just being flabbergasted at this whole scene. And he gets frustrated and he hands it over to his underling and he says, I want to go there, I want to go there, I want to go there. And he plays one game with it and he defeats me. He's a 6th degree black belt in Go. Like my father, who's also a 6th dan. I'm a 3rd degree black belt, so I can hold my own. If you give me 3 stones or you're 6th dan, we have an even game. He beats a 9x9 Go algorithm on Famicom. And he says, it's too weak for Nintendo. I said, Mr. Yamauchi, it's a miracle that it plays Go at all. You know, it's plenty strong for children to learn how to play Go. And he says, did you not hear what I said? I said, it's too weak for Nintendo. I had to think fast. I said, Mr. Yamauchi, it may be too weak for Nintendo, but it's strong enough for my company, BPS. Let me publish it. What about my money? I'll give you 100 yen for each copy until you get your money back, which is $1. So I would have had to sell 300,000 copies to give him his money back. And he said, deal. That is how I became a Nintendo publisher. Because if he says, yes, you can publish it, it means, yes, he's given me the blessing to be a publisher. So Go was my first game. And after that, you know, I had other reasons to meet with Yamauchi. And so I would always make the appointment on a day when he had no other appointments after my meeting. And then we would play Go afterwards. And it was like the prince and the pauper, you know, because when we play Go, everybody else is gone. Normally he's got underlings that are making sure he doesn't say or do anything that he's not supposed to, whatever. But when you play Go, there's nobody in the room. First of all, nobody else in the industry played Go. Can you imagine? And those two worlds didn't collide at all. Go in Japan is not considered a game. They don't even say play Go. They say do Go. It's like doing kendo or aikido, and Go is in that class. And so we played Go, and then he would ask me questions about the business, what's going on, and so when we were actually the closest thing that he would have to being a friend with somebody. I'm at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. My job is to find games to bring to Japan. And the way it works is there are like hundreds of monitors from dozens of companies, all showing games. And the people are lined up to play those games, for a couple of minutes to get an impression.
He was trying to have a Go game. He was really into Go. He had this other game he was working on called Black Onyx. But everybody was playing this game in our booth. Tetris, Hank came over to play.
So I stand in line, and there I play Tetris for the first time. And, then I go and play other games, and I find myself standing in line at the Tetris machine again. And I play again. I said, oh, okay. And I go away, and I find the fourth time I'm standing in this line is like, I'm really hooked on this game.
And he sees my name on the top of the high score list. So he sits there for hours trying to knock me off the list.
I put the high score on the game. I beat Gilman Louis' high score on that game.
He meets up with Phil.
I showed it to Hank for the first time. Hank loved it.
Phil takes Hank into a meeting with me.
And so I started negotiating with Gilman about Tetris for Japan.
And Hank goes, I want to get the Japanese rights. At the CES, that's when we met with Robert Stein, who had the first version of Tetris that he said he saw while he was in Hungary, and was trying to see if there would be an American publisher of that particular game. Stein made his career finding interesting products in the Eastern Europe, right, and bringing them to the West. A sole practitioner of licensing people's products, identifying potential talent. I think that was an important function at that time, given the fact that it was really hard to go to a place like the Soviet Union. What was interesting was Robert Stein had shot this game to a few other publishers. One of them was to Broderbund.
I thought, we wouldn't have said this at the time because they didn't exist, but it was more of a handheld kind of game, a little bit of a lightweight game. I didn't feel like it had the heft to be a PC game. I also thought it looked a little messy. It was a story that I heard about where it came from and through whom, but I was dealing with people several steps down the ladder, and I wasn't totally sure of its provenance.
There was a producer at that time Brad Frager. It's kind of a contract producer. And Brad was saying, hey, I just saw this great game called Tetris that Robert Stein is showing around. You should really, really publish it. Then I got a call from Microsoft, from Jim McConaughey. Jim goes, hey, Stein is coming to the States. He dropped off this game. We can't stop playing it. Like, we cannot stop playing it.
Jim McConaughey, who was the CEO for Microsoft, said, I've got something to show you. And he showed me Tetris. I played it for a little bit, just couldn't quit playing it. Jim says, hey, I'm dealing with Robert Stein. He has the rights to it.
Phil was in the meeting, myself was in the meeting, and Stein was in the meeting. I said, I like the game a lot, but I want to make a lot of changes. Right? I want to change the graphics. I want to change the scoring mechanisms, the controls. I want to tweak with it. Can I talk to the programmers? And he goes, you can't talk to the programmers. I go, like, I can't talk to the programmers. Why can't I talk to the programmers? If you're licensing somebody's product, I need to be able to talk to the programmers. And he goes, well, the programmers are not in Hungary. They're in the Soviet Union. Soviet Union? I turned to Phil. I said, put it in a red box.
We wanted to push it as the first product out of Russia, and we came up with a marketing concept and the Saint Bastille as the box and the spelling of Tetris using the Russian symbol and letters.
So his marketing brain starts rolling. My marketing brain starts rolling. So we do the deal.
We signed the deal, but unbeknownst to us, is it was signed in with Academy Soft, and eventually Elorg Programma took it over in Russia, and that's how some of the rights got convoluted later.
We spent months trying to get that thing tuned so that it felt right through that progression till you got into that sweet spot of the gameplay, because that was a key part of the magic of the game, right? We even put a thing called the boss key because people were playing this thing at work. So we had so that if you press a key, a spreadsheet, a fake VisiCalc sheet would show up because people, once you started playing, they couldn't stop playing. We had to get people to pick up the game. So we had to tell a story. You know, we really try to play up this kind of glasnost environment. Hey, this is the game that Russia will use to invade America, right? Through addiction. We were trying to put together a story that would get people sucked into the game. But once you got into the game took care of the rest. And yeah, we tweaked it, we tuned it, but the core of the game was always there. It was there way before we touched the product. And I give all the credit to the original Russian team.
We finally got the PC version from Spectrum Holobyte. And when we put it on PC and saw it, we got, both of us, me and Belikov, we became pale.
There's a 16-year-old German pilot that landed a plane in Red Square, and we put that into the introduction.
Pulling a banner that says "Play Tetris," right across the screen.
That was very big political scandal at this time around this landing and whatever.
So we thought that was fun because, again, we're trying to get the game positioned so that when they think about the Soviet Union, they'll think about Tetris. When they think about Tetris, they'll think about the Soviet Union. Stein goes, you need to change that.
We immediately kind of contact them and say it's absolutely unacceptable.
So we pulled it out.
And I say, no problem, we will take it away. That was a very big relief.
Just so happened, as we were coding up the game, the announcement goes off that it's going to be the first summit, détente, between Reagan and Gorbachev. So that all was part of how we framed it. Like, this is the thing that's going to break through the Iron Curtain.
We hired a Gorbachev and a Reagan lookalike.
And we start producing ads, a USA Today style ad that says, what's really happening behind these secret meetings, and they had them two playing Tetris. And it was picked up by everybody.
We really went all out, TV, media, the whole perestroika.
So Tetris was actually launched with the story from the New York Times as the first game from the Soviet Union.
And it won Game of the Year at the SBA Awards for 1988.
The situation was very clear. Not my computer center, even Academy of Science has no right to have any business deal with somebody outside of USSR. It was very special agency of Ministry of Foreign Affairs who was authorized to sign some kind of business deals with any other outside entities. And then I start kind of my odyssey over those different agencies in Moscow. I didn't want this too much. I was a little bit afraid of all this kind of activity around this stuff. So any excuse to avoid it, I used in full force. But as soon as I have this telex, I need to do something with it. And I did several agency, and all of them kind of say, no, we don't deal with software, we don't know how to do this. It's not our main job, and the deal is too small or whatever. Finally, I got very good guy in Ilorg. His last name was Alexeyenko. Sasha Alexeyenko, Alexander Alexeyenko, yeah. He likes programming and he likes us programmers, and that was a very big hope for my little game. So I prepare some kind of paper for agreement between Computer Center and Delorg. My deputy director just signed it without reading. 3 or 4 months I didn't heard anything of it. And all of a sudden he called me and say, yeah, well, I met Robert Stein. He considered your reply as an agreement. I say, come on, how could it be? It looks like he get this deal as is, and he is sub-licensed it already, and the game is about to come out. We can't do anything like that. So the only thing we could do is just to sign the agreement with them and let them do it. So we don't have we cannot bargain with him already because he consider this telex reply as a general agreement. That was it. Somehow it happens and stopped. And I never heard about the game, about anything for another kind of maybe 3 or 4 months. But at this time, the new person came to the scene, Mr. Belikov, Nikolai Evgenievich Belikov came on board. He became the chief of my previous friend. We discussed the strategy, we discussed what we could do. We decided we never give up the other platforms and whatever. So we was all in agreement about this stuff.
So I went to Japan.
It's June by now. Gilman Louis comes to Japan. His first stop is the company that put him in business, a Japanese company called ASCII, that made a deal to represent Microsoft in Japan.
I had a good relationship with Microsoft Japan through ASCII Corporation because they kind of gave me my start, giving me contracts to develop games for the MSX back then. It was a Japanese computer.
That was their relationship. So he had to stop at ASCII first. And they were the biggest company in Japan at that time.
I showed it to them, but they were, they were not that interested in Tetris.
ASCII passed on Tetris in 1988 because they said Tetris was too retro. Can you imagine? Tetris was too retro in 1988. ASCII is gone, Tetris is still here. I would say ASCII is too retro.
So Henk goes, I'll license it. I agree that Henk would be the right partner because Henk loved this product. Like, he loved this product. And I knew he was going to do right by this product. Henk wanted console rights as well. Now, this is pre-Game Boy.
Gilman, at that point, licensed me. Of course, it was PC, it was console, it was coin-op, and then he goes back, and we had made a whole deal.
So I go back and I call up Microsoft because we jointly owned the IP. The Mirror Group was owned by the Maxwells, and the son of Robert Maxwell. Robert Maxwell was the head of the entire enterprise. But Kevin was trying to build his own sub-publishing group inside this, an electronic publishing group. The CEO was a guy by the name of Peter Bellata. And Peter wanted the rights for Blasteroids. He traded Blasteroid rights for Tetris.
3 weeks later, he calls me and he says, I'm really sorry to say this, but while I was in Japan dealing this, Microsoft has licensed those rights to Tengen, Atari Games / Tengen. I said, those guys absolutely have no presence in Japan. Why would they do that? They traded it for Blasteroids.
Blasteroids was a B game at best.
I mean, Blasteroid sounds like a condition. Blasteroid, here, take some preparation B. You know, where did nobody ever heard of Blasteroids after that? Anyway,
I was furious, but he wanted the Atari brand. So I go up to Kevin. I said, "This is Kevin Maxwell. I said, this is the worst decision you could ever make. How could you let this game go for a B-class game like Blasteroids?" Kevin was trying to broker the peace between warring American company run by myself, Sphere and Spectrum Holobyte, and Peter Bellata, who was running Microsoft at the time. So the way it worked was, okay, you keep the game rights, but Peter is going to license this off. So I call up Henk and I said to Henk, look, I'm out of it.
I said, Gilman, we made a deal. You can't just like walk away and say that, sorry, there was no deal. We have a deal. He said, okay, let me see what I can do. And then what he came back with is, okay, well, I got you the PC rights, the personal computer rights. And that's something.
My parent company has ruled that they're going to go with the Brits. The Brits have licensing it to Atari or Tengen, right? You need to go talk to them if you want to get the rights for the cartridge rights.
I had already started developing on all 8 different personal computers. They were all not compatible. And on Nintendo, on the family computer or the NES. Tengen. I know the guy who I can deal with at Tengen. His name is Randy Brolite. He sends me a fax and he says, sorry, but we've made a decision. We can't license it to you. I'm like, what? And Atari Games was owned, it was 46% by an American company, 46% by Namco, and 8% by the people running the company. So I thought, well, maybe Namco decided that they're going to publish it. But Namco had a policy. They never published anybody else's software. They only ever published their own games. I remember being at a trade show, and I ran into Iwatani. Iwatani is the creator of Pac-Man. And so I go, Mr. Iwatani, what do you think of Tetris? And he drew a blank. He said, what do you mean? I said, never mind. If Namco was going to be publishing Tetris, and if they were looking at it, he would know. And so the fact that he didn't know meant that Namco had no eyes on Tetris. I said to my team, look, I'm getting on a plane. I'm going to there in San Jose. I'm going to San Francisco. I'm not coming back till I have these rights. I got a meeting. Remember the table with Van Elderen, Nakajima, Randy Brolite, and I was explaining that I had already made a lot of progress on Tetris, and it took me 10 days. You know, I remember having sushi with the president of Atari Games, Nakajima, and on a napkin we made a deal. That's how I end up being able to publish Tetris in Japan. So I thought.
We've invited everybody in here today for the grand showing of the original Tetris as Alexei programmed it. The machine is an electronic 60, and Alexei came up with the idea to program Tetris, and he thought about it for 10 days and programmed it for about 4 days. And this is the result of his effort. So Alexei,
I'm still on level 5, and I could increase the speed on the fly.
oh really?
Yes.
I did that by accident the other day. How does that work?
Yeah, you just push the 4 button, and now here we go. We are on the level 6.
Oh, I see. It's a one-way thing. See?
My scoring system was a little bit complicated.
I had invented some new additions to Tetris.
One contribution that Henk made that most people don't know about was the single, double, triple Tetris. The idea of clearing 4 lines at a time, and that gives you the highest score. Like that was Henk.
In the original rules of Tetris, there is no points awarded for clearing a line. The only points that you get in the original Tetris is for allowing a new piece to appear in the playfield. And the way the scoring works is you get 24 points for allowing a piece to appear in the playfield. Every time it falls one row, then you lose 1 point. So the quicker you hard drop it into its final position, the more points you save. And Alexei charges you a 5-point tax for peeking at the next piece. So instead of getting 24 points, you only get 19 points if the next piece is showing.
No, можно так. Now you see the next piece is shown just in the middle of the screen. I mean, height-wise.
Do you like that idea though?
Rewarding the player? Yeah, actually it's more natural. That's what people expect. You know, when I wrote the game, I think just about my own common sense. But if you build a game for people to play, you need to respond to what they expect out of the game. And it's quite natural to get extra credit for cleaning lines and other stuff. So basically it's much better idea.
I used to play Tetris in arcade. That was Sega arcade. And before I joined the Sega, I was a teenager. And, the Japanese Game Center, that was a very exciting place. Two people sat facing each other in a table type cabinet. And it was, coins stacked on the table like that. And I wasn't a good player, but I watched the super plays, by the great players, many great players in Japan. And there was always a huge crowd around the Tetris table. Tetris was like very intellectual battle type of game, It's very quiet and silence, and very high tension, and everybody watching just blocks. I think Tetris is the first game, it's very great to watch. Yeah, Tetris is very minimal, simple game. No decoration, just, very simple patterns of shapes. Everybody go into a deep dive into the zone states kind of feel. I love that. I love that feeling.
So I send my guys out to get initial orders for Tetris. And they came back and said, we got 40,000 units. And 40,000 is not enough. Because in order for you to get a repeat order, you have to sell through at least 200,000 copies. And so I made a meeting with you, Mr. Yamauchi, again. So, Mr. Yamauchi, I think I have one of the greatest games in the history of computer games. And my guy, I don't know whether it's my marketing that sucks or whether my sales guys suck. I don't know. But we've only been able to get 40,000 units. Well, he calls in Miyamoto. Miyamoto's the guy who made Mario and Zelda and everything. He called him Miyamoto. Miyamoto, is this a great game? And Miyamoto says, yes. And it's, wow. So, and how do you know? It says, because your secretaries and accountants are playing at lunch and after work. And then he calls in Imanishi. He's the number 2. He goes, Imanishi, I want you to put Nintendo's seal of approval on this game. I was like, whoa, that's like the seal of good housekeeping. And I want you to call every distributor and tell them to order more. I was like, wow, this is some serious action that's going on here. I remember there was a moment when Yamauchi actually thought, he could buy Tetris from me and then let Nintendo publish it. And he said, you'll make much more money if you let me publish Tetris and I'll pay you royalties. And I said, that may be true, but Tetris is my game. The only way that I would give you Tetris is if you would give me Mario. Okay, you got the point. So thank you very much. Go back to Yokohama. Mr. Imanishi calls me back the next day and says, please, please, please don't make me put the seal of approval on the game, because if I do, then every other company is going to want a seal of approval. And then I have to set up a whole department figuring out which games have, get the seal of approval or not. And then it's just going to be a huge headache. So, but I'll call every distributor for you and make them order more. Okay, I thought, well, shoot, as long as I get the orders, I'm fine. So he calls distributors, and we got another 30,000, which is like, oh, come on, So Christmas comes, the distribution has puts our games in all the stores, and it's not selling through. Nobody knows what Tetris is. It's not a game that you can look at an ad and say, oh, I want to play that game. No, you have to play Tetris. And so distributors then, the stores started panicking. The distributors started dumping. Dumping means selling below their cost. I got my guys calling everybody, said, do not dump your software. This is a different pattern from every other game. People have to play the game before they can want to. It'll take off, but it takes off slower. Well, end of January, every place was sold out, and every place was clamoring for more. Beginning of February, we got orders for 200,000 units. Where am I going to get the money for 200,000 units? Because at that time, the way that it worked is you had to pay Nintendo cash up front. Then basically, they go into manufacturing. 2 months later, you get your delivery, it goes into the store. Then you get paid back. So it's 2.5 months before you get your money back. $2.5 million, $2 million, $10 or 1,000 yen a cartridge. And so I went to the bank, and the bank says, where's your collateral for $2 million? And finally, I convinced my wife to convince her family, her father. Basically, they put up all of their real estate, all of it. And so we managed to hang on.